I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on the season premiere of Almanac North.
Bold Choice Theater is receiving statewide recognition for empowering people with disabilities. We'll have more on the work they are doing. 102
years ago, the flu was ravaging the United States. We'll look back at the parallels to today's pandemic.
And we will talk with a global health policy expert for his view on the political response to the pandemic a century later.
It's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. Denny and I are back together for our first show of our 29th season with a new look and a new set. What do you think, Denny?
I feel like we have jumped into the next millennium. This is ultra modern.
It looks beautiful.
Good to be back with you.
Good to be back with you too,
Thank
even
you.
if it is just for a week, and we've got a good one to start the season.
Yeah, that we do. Thank you very much, Julie. Well, the Bold Choice Theater Company, which empowers people with disabilities, recently garnered a State Achievement Award from the Minnesota Organization for Habilitation and Rehabilitation. Our Ramona Moroza spoke with members of the group about the importance of inclusivity for those with disabilities who are often overlooked in their communities.
Hi, my name is Pete, and ever since high school I've always wanted to live on my own and be independent.
My name is Christopher Wark, and I'm one of the Bold Choice theater actors. Bold is a theater production that reaches out to kids and communities and give out disability rights, empowerment, self-advocacy, and enrichment. My favorite part about acting is that you get learn new things, and it's a lot of fun, and you get to reach out to people about self-advocacy and disability rights and fairness to everyone.
I don't mean to stare, but you all look a little different, unlike anything or anyone I've seen before. Oh, thank you!
We're a big outreach theater group that tours this area, and we will tour anywhere that wants to invite us to come. We do original.
My name's Annie Rosine, and I'm the director of Bold Choice Theater Company. We were given an award by MORE, which is an organization of day program agencies that work with folks with disabilities.
We're gonna party when it's normal.
Yeah, we'll have a party.
We were given an Outstanding Achievement Award for the work that we do, and the work that we do is outreach theater productions. So we are a cast of about 30 people, of folks with disabilities and without, and we create really multi-dimensional art forms on stage. And so we do plays that we create from the ground up. So we create what our idea is behind it, what characters will be involved, all the lines, and the premise behind each play.
MORE is an organization that represents 100 service providers across the state of Minnesota who support life enrichment opportunities for people with disabilities. So Choice was selected to be the winner of the 2020 MORE Life Enrichment Award for its excellence and opportunities in creating fine arts opportunities for people with disabilities in the community. Everybody needs to be included. It's just like everything else in our community these days. There's pockets of people and they're treated differently. Our community is stronger when everybody's included and part of the community.
Any kind of systemic discrimination really impacts folks with disabilities. They are kind of the last marginalized community to be recognized as needing full access to rights. The ADA, the American Disability Act, was passed in 1990, which is wonderful that that's 30 years ago, but if you think about other civil rights laws were passed 30 years prior to that. So it's still new, there's still people who are alive who lived through institutionalization and marginalization on fronts that we can't imagine.
You're important, you have very important things that you should contribute to the community, and the community will be better if you're a part of it.
If you're that goes for women and people of color. If you never see your leaders or your movie stars or your athletes look or sound or be from where you're from, you're not going to think you're included in that. And people with disabilities, I mean, we can name on one hand the actors that we can remember who had disabilities, physical and developmental. And so to have Bold Choice be that these heroes to people with and without disabilities, all of a sudden these people they look up to have that, it includes them more in everyday life. And so for children and adults to see their entertainers and their leaders be like them just really resonates within their own selves, that it's not always the other that's going to be who pulls us out of something or who ruins something for us, that it feels empowered to say, oh yeah, I can be heard and I should be heard.
The way that I got involved in Bold was I started with some acting classes, and then I kind of learned how to act, and then I just asked Annie if it was okay if I could take a position in Bold. And she said, oh yeah, that would be great. You know, you're a great actor and it's a lot of fun. And one of the things that I really learned is that, you know, you can always empower yourself, and you can always encourage yourself. And of course, right now we're doing a play on Zoom, which is 5 different plays, and we could teach more people how to speak up for themselves and make a greater impact on people's lives. Everybody tells me I'm a great guy.
Bold Choice Theater is part of Choice Unlimited, a community-based private nonprofit organization in Duluth. Choice is dedicated to supporting adults with disabilities and individuals who are experiencing barriers to employment and inclusion. And joining us now is Annie Racine, the Bold Choice Theater Director and Arts Program Coordinator at Choice Unlimited. Annie, thank you so very much for being here with us. How important is this award in raising awareness in the community about the value of being inclusive?
Well, the work is our most important goal, but it is nice to get recognized. It helps get the word out and have people recognize our names. So when they think of who's doing what in the community, they think of us. Mm-hmm. So we were just saying that actors love recognition. So during this time, we all need a little boost. So it was nice to get an award.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. For people who might not be familiar with Choice Unlimited, mm-hmm. talk a little bit about what it does in addition to the theater program.
Well, primarily it's an employment agency in that it helps folks find and support them in employment. So it's a day program, so folks with disabilities or people who might be facing some barriers get assistance from Choice Unlimited in job development and job seeking, and so they find careers and jobs, and then when they're not working, we fill out their day with what they wish to fill out their day with. So if that's arts or volunteering or physical exercise or going out to coffee or whatever all of us do.
Annie, how does acting help in all of that?
Well, acting helps in all of that in that I think that it's a way to express yourself. It's a way to feel included in a group. It's also a way to be looked up to. Gain confidence? Definitely gaining confidence. I mean, we've had audiences of thousands clapping, so who doesn't feel good after that? But even when we aren't, we do acting classes too, so smaller scale. I think just having a goal and reaching it, and a creative goal that they helped develop, and then performing it and getting feedback. I think it's good.
Sure.
It's good for that.
You mentioned a crowd of 1,000 clapping. Generally, what kind of reaction do you get, though, from the audience when you talk to them afterward?
Mm-hmm. We get wonderful reactions afterwards. I think for a lot of folks that come to the play, they're familiar with some of the actors, friends and family. That's what a lot of theater goers end up being, especially in small local theaters. But also people who came because they heard about it or the subject matter interested them. And some people are surprised. I think people sometimes have different expectations of folks with disabilities. I think usually what is a success for us is if they leave moved and entertained, just like any other theater company would want their audiences to feel.
So what are you currently working on or even performing?
Well, pre-pandemic, we were touring our most recent show, which is which is called Bloom, and that was an original show. All our plays are original that we create from the ground up. So we have about a year's time of creating a play, what we want to say, what kind of characters fit with that storyline. And we'd been touring it for about, I think, maybe 7 months to local schools and organizations and conferences. And then mid-tour is when the pandemic hit. And so we are just on hold for that play, and we hope to do a few more performances, including a public performance. So it would be open to everyone in the community. And then since then, we had to be creative, which is our job. And so we went from a once a week 30-person cast to a 4 times a week 5-person-ish, 6-person-ish cast, and we decided that we have to be in Zoom, so we're looking at each other in the little screens, and we created 5 original new plays that take place in a Zoom setting. So just one example is a group of people who are all connecting that used to be in a rock band, and now 20 years later they're trying to discuss if they should go back on tour, and they're all in the Zoom room in character. So we have 5 different one of those. So it's been a wild
Now, can members
time.
of the public peek in on these Zoom performances?
Yeah, well, not during rehearsal, but we're going to start recording and editing them next week, and then we are going to share them. We'll put them on either a YouTube or a Vimeo or something, so they can be shared, and we will put it on our Facebook. So there's a Choice Unlimited Facebook page, and there's also a Bold Choice Theater Facebook page. So we'll do the connections there so you can see them.
Andy, can you speak to us about how empowering this might be for those who are taking part?
Yeah, I think that really any kind of activity that starts to help you develop an identity of your own, one that you are kind of the author for, is empowering. I think that a lot of folks with disabilities end up working or being in settings where they are being helped, or they are maybe have an entry-level type job, but in the arts they can really be self-determining, I don't know if that's a word, and they can decide for themselves, do they consider themselves an artist? And I think being able to identify yourself as a title is empowering for all of us. So.
And how important is it just for inclusion for those who are in the disability community?
Yeah, well, I think that it opens a door to the audience members to see folks with disabilities. If they're not familiar with that part of the community, it just familiarizes themselves. So the next time they work with somebody, or have someone in their family, or have a friend, or have somebody over for dinner, if they have a disability, it might not seem daunting that there's this wall of a difference. So it's very important for inclusion.
It sounds like you've also been doing some challenging human rights challenges.
Yeah, well, Bold Choice does have a kind of a twofold approach. We want to be entertaining and good theater, but we also want to address advocacy issues, self-advocacy issues, and ally issues for the disability community.
All right, Annie Rosine, thank you so very much for being with us.
Yeah.
All the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. "2020 has been a year filled with challenges, with the COVID-19 pandemic creating social and economic distress. 102 years ago, Americans were experiencing another pandemic as the 1918 flu swept across the country in waves. This week, we talked with Duluth historians Dan Hartman and Tony Dierkens about how the government handled the 1918 pandemic.
Back then, we didn't have a strong mayor system. We had a city commission. And so it was actually one of our city commissioners, Silverstein, whose job it was to say whether the city would close or not.
Bernard Silverstein, our public safety commissioner at the time, really led the charge. Back then, our city council was made up of 5 commissioners that had their own department. So these 5 people made the decisions. And he was very vehement. Superior lifted its ban early. And Silverstein went on record and he's saying, please, Duluthians, don't go over to Superior. He even asked the city council if maybe consider closing the bridges. in between there to keep it out of Duluth.
How the response is different now versus then is right now our responses are very statewide. Back then it was up to every municipality of when they would go to lockdown. And so when the disease would hit your town, then you'd go to lockdown typically. And every city did it to different levels. You know, Philadelphia was famous because they didn't really do much. They ended up having a parade and then everyone got infected.
The same day Duluth announced its flu ban, if you will, the restrictions it was going to put in place in October of 1918, that's the same day the Cloquet fire broke out. Right, so you have this huge fire, 453 dead in the region, 85 of those in Duluth. You've got 27 Duluthians that already have the flu. Meanwhile, another 55 Duluthians that already died in the war in Europe at the same time. So bad news is coming home every day.
If you're on the internet right now, it's hard to scroll and not see a 2020 meme about how terrible this year is. I would argue 1918 was a little worse. And so, I mean, you have the fire, you've got the flu, you've got World War I.
In 1918, a lot more, Duluth was hit a lot harder than Superior was in 1920 when the flu came through, because it lasted 3 waves over a number of years. 1920 was the reverse. Superior was hit hard, and Duluth didn't get hit as hard.
It's 102 years later, and it's still a lot of disbelief in medicine. A lot of people who don't want to believe what a virus is, and a lot of just kind of general misunderstandings of how it spreads, I think has been kind of scary to watch, because the same conversation happened 100 years ago.
We lost 325 people in 4 months. But at the same time, we could have lost 700 if we were at the national average. Right. So the work that we did worked. You know, that mandates, staying restricted, it helped a great deal.
Similar to today, which kind of scares me, people had a high sense of credibility in medicine. After the 1918 flu, the credibility of the medical community went down for a while because people stopped believing in medicine because they couldn't solve the 1918 flu.
Our next guest has spent a good part of his career studying global health policy and has written books on the subject. Dr. Jeremy Eude is the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts at UMD. Welcome back, Jeremy. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
So one of the differences between 1918 and now is that the government response to that one was really at a local level. How does that change things in terms of what we're seeing today?
Well, I think you start to see a few different dynamics because ideally with the current situation, it should be led more at a national level. And so that should allow for more continuity. So we've got some more just shared understanding about how we should approach things. When you've got things like in the 1918, when it is very much on a local level, you see things like Duluth and Superior having very different policies, or Minneapolis and St. Paul having very different policies, and that leads to very different sorts of outcomes.
And Jeremy, the modern media must play a huge role in the response today compared to 102 years ago.
Well, it's actually kind of interesting because if you look back to 1918, part of the reason that we call that Spanish flu is not because of it originated in Spain or anything like that. It's because of wartime censorship that was going on. And so media was still playing a role, but you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have Facebook,
Sure.
You didn't have those sorts of things that were fanning some conspiracy theories or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Are there some lessons from the 1918 flu that you think we could really be drawing on today, politically and globally, as we combat this pandemic?
Sure, there are a few things that come to mind. One is the importance of just having clear and consistent messaging, that you need to have messages that are shared from the top down, that they're being repeated, and so that people feel like, yes, this is coming from a trusted source of information. Second is having some sort of international coordination, because what happens in the US and what happens in Canada and happens in Mexico and happens in other countries, they're going to have an effect on each other. And when you don't have organizations or structures that can really help to facilitate that, it makes it that much harder, because we know that these diseases spread across borders. They don't care about the fact that there's an international border between the United States and Canada. So that's not going to stop the disease in and of itself. So you need to have those means of having some sort of coordination there.
How do you make sense of the human reaction to a pandemic?
It's to some extent, it's kind of understandable because it is something that is it's mind-blowing. It's so unexpected. It's hard for us to really grasp. It's something that we can't even see, and here it's having all this devastating effect on our economy, on our politics, even just on our day-to-day lives. So it's understandable that people would feel uncertain or just not quite sure how to respond to it, and that's why it's all the more important that we have that sort of coordinated response, and we have that trusted source of information that we can look to.
And I would sense a great deal of frustration.
Absolutely. I mean, I would love to be able to go to a movie or to go see some live music or go out and just hang out with my friends at a restaurant or a bar, and having to take those extra steps of, oh, can I actually do this? Do I really want to travel down to Iowa to visit my family? Well, they have different policies and different responses in Iowa than we've had in Minnesota, so that's had an effect on the caseloads there. That's very frustrating to have that extra step to think about how I'm going to conduct my life. And that's something that I think is shared pretty much across the country and across the world.
In terms of economic recovery, any historic insights that we could draw upon to kind of help pull our country out of this?
If we do look back to 1918, we did see a similar sort of economic drop that was happening in the aftermath of the flu pandemic. And so I think part of what is important is thinking about sort of the trade-offs that happen. That on the one hand, we talk about the cost that we're having now because things are shut down or they're not able to reopen in the same sort of way. But the more that we do now, the less that we have to do later. The easier it will be to try to restart things and get back into some sort of normal economic mode. So it really is about those sorts of trade-offs and trying to be ready and be prepared when we are able to resume relatively normal operations.
Is there another unknown, unnamed pandemic waiting on the horizon someplace?
Probably. In last year, the World Health Organization listed they came out with a list of 10 top disease threats, infectious disease threats, and most of them were things that we had heard of. The bottom one was disease X, and that's the unknown, and that's what COVID-19 is, and that there probably is something else that's out there. Who knows when it will happen, who knows where it will happen, who knows what it will be, and that's why it's all the more important that we prepare now, that we try to be as resilient as possible and have those systems in place so that when that next thing does happen, we're ready to have some sort of response.
I don't know how many people I've heard say that this is all just going to go away after November 3rd. Is it dangerous to have people in their minds anyway tie this very clearly to politics?
It is, because while politics obviously play an important role in how we respond to this and what sorts of actions we might take, again, the diseases don't care about our politics, and so they don't have a stake one way or the other in the election. They're not rooting for one candidate or another. But what is going to be important is thinking about those sorts of policies that might come out and what we're going to be able to do to say support developing a vaccine, and then making sure that people get access to that vaccine if and when we're able to develop one. And politics will obviously play a very big role in that. November 3rd, though, is not going to be the make or break. It's not going everything's not going to be different on November 4th with the disease.
Is it foolish to presume the next pandemic is 100 years off? So why worry about it?
I wish we could say it was going to be 100 years off, but it's unlikely. It could be next year, it could be 20 years from now, it could be 100 years from now. We can never quite predict these things, and that's why, again, having that sort of preparation ready to go just in case is all the more important and really vital to just have that in the back pocket.
Jeremy, has this spread quicker than the pandemic of 1918 simply because we travel around the world much easier than we did back then?
Well, you've got different sorts of things that are moving it. So with the 1918 pandemic, it was travel, but it wasn't travel because we were going on holiday or vacation. It's because we were moving troops going in to fight during World War I. And so that definitely has a contribution to it, but it's sort of the flip side of globalization. On the one hand, we love the fact that we're able to travel so easily. We're able to go to other places, but diseases and bacteria they travel with us. They end up as stowaways when we do those sorts of things. And they get to take advantage of it as well.
As we mentioned in the introduction, you're the Dean of the UMD College of Liberal Arts. Coming into the station today, we're on the campus. I can see that the students are back. How's it going so far?
So far, so good. Cross our fingers. We are in this first 2-week period. All the courses are being taught online. Students started moving back into the dormitories on Wednesday. Starting on the 14th, we have a variety of different modes of how we're teaching. And so we're all trying to figure out exactly what this is going to look like. We're not going to be able to have the same sorts of football games. We're not going to be able to have the same sorts of big orientation activities that we might normally have. But students have shown themselves to be really resilient. The faculty and staff have shown themselves to be really resilient. And I think we're all really excited about what this semester is going to have to offer.
All right. Well, Dr. Jeremy Eude, thank you once again for being here and sharing some of your real valuable insights with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next week on Almanac North, we'll begin coverage of the candidates running for state legislature in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The candidates in our region have been invited to submit campaign speeches, which we will feature each week in a portion of our program leading up to Election Day. Almanac North producers are also working on a special Meet Your Candidates program that will feature all the candidates who submit their campaign speeches. Watch for that program in October, and for the candidate statements to be featured on our website and social media channels.
And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow Almanac North on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can also visit the WDSC website for program updates, upcoming events, and more information about the station. And if you haven't done it already, download the PBS video app for on-demand viewing of your favorite PBS programs and past episodes of Almanac North, of course. So, Danny, it was great to be back together with you here, even if it was for just a very short amount of time.
We'll be going back to individual hosting of Almanac North during the pandemic.
That's right. We will be doing that until physical distancing is no longer needed. Thanks to our guests and to the crew here in the studio. I'm Julie Zenner. We'll see you next time.